Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Good Friday morning. It is O'Connor and Company, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. You're listening to Patrice Onwuka. I'm your usual Friday gal, and I'm sitting in for Larry today. And accompanying me is the fantastic, wonderful, thoughtful, smart, over the top, can I add any more, constitutional election policy expert, Hans von Spakovsky. Good morning, Hans.
Good morning, Patrice. Yeah, Larry left his shoes here, and they're actually too big for me to fill. So,
all right, we'll do the best we can. It's at 7:35. We're going to have Mike Litterst. You know him from the National Park Service. He's giving us the update on the peak bloom of the cherry blossoms. And at 8:05, Alana Goodman from the Washington Free Beacon will break down what we did and did not get out of the Epstein files. But all morning we've been teasing our next guest, Maine State Representative Laurel Libby. Laurel has been fighting to protect women's sports. And, you know, this is an issue that is near and dear to our hearts here at WMAL. Laurel, thank you for joining us, and good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Terrific. Well, all right, let's get right into it. We have seen your governor in Maine go toe-to-toe with President Trump in the past week over abiding by executive orders. And we've seen Maine join a number of different states in trying to be the resistance against protecting women's sports. Tell us how insane it is and what is going on, particularly what happened to you when you stood up for women and stood up for girls.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks, and I have to say, Maine is getting a pretty notorious reputation, unfortunately, due to the actions of our governor. You know, just under a month ago, President Trump issued his executive order, and Maine immediately said, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to continue to allow biological males to participate in girls' sports. Shortly thereafter, a biological male, won a girls' pole vault state championship. And I shared about that on social media. And that kind of started off a cascade of events that culminated in that interaction between President Trump and Governor Mills. And since then, this week, I have officially been censured by the Democrats in the House and am no longer permitted to speak on the floor or to vote on the floor, all in an effort to silence me and silence Maine girls.
You know, it's just astonishing. I mean, thank you for coming onto the show to talk about this. This is such a serious issue, except that what happened to you would make a great story or plot on Saturday Night Live. They're censoring you, if I understand this correctly, for publicly talking about a public event. You know, it's not as if this pole vaulting championship was held in secret, right? Or are they going to put, when they record this, the written recording of this win, are they going to put anonymous next to the name of this boy who won this? I mean, this is just astonishing that you would get censored for speaking publicly about a public event attended by lots and lots of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just highlights kind of the ridiculousness of it. This was a public event, and yes, I shared the photos, but that's the argument they're using to silence me and shut this down, because they don't want to have a conversation about the actual issue. So they're trying to make it about a post, when really this is about the bigger issue of Maine women and girls being silenced, being pushed aside, and being told they just need to suck it up and allow these biological males to take their place on the podium. This is far from the first time that this has happened in Maine. This is an ongoing problem. It's just that this is the first time that Governor Mills has a challenger on this, right? She wasn't being challenged under the previous administration, and now she is. And I'm thrilled, because that's the only way we'll get remedy.
We're speaking with Maine State Representative Laurel Libby, who was censured for simply just pointing out the unfairness of a trans or biological boy competing against women, girls, and actually winning competitions. You know, Laurel, I look at your website, and something that what sticks out to me is you talk about the fact that Maine is a type of state where in the past, lots of different perspectives have always been welcome. Civil discourse has been welcome. Respectful discourse has been welcome. But it seemed like after 2020, you said that there was a change. What do you think happened in 2020? And what do you think is needed now to bring the state back to a place where, you know, people can agree to disagree, but not be silenced?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, with when COVID happened, things were so extreme here in Maine. Our governor, same governor, put in the most draconian rules possible. We even had the notorious snitch lines where neighbors could report neighbors for gatherings, et cetera. And so everything became so polarized, and people became really afraid to speak up. So we still have differing opinions, but there's this loud minority that is bullying, right? And that's what this is in this case. They're bullies, and they are stomping their feet because they don't want the truth getting out there. Because as the truth is getting out there, I'm hearing from folks telling me, I've been afraid to speak up because I thought I was the only one. But now I have courage to speak up, and so now we're not going to be silent on this anymore. And that's what we need. I don't know that that's going to make the woke left any more willing to work together, but we certainly need the silent majority to speak up.
Well, I wonder, given what the governor has said, what Democrats in the legislature have done to you, I wonder, gee, are they going to follow in the footsteps of Merrick Garland? Is the governor going to form a task force with the Attorney General and state police to investigate as domestic terrorists any Maine parents who show up at their school boards to complain about this? Because that would seem to be the next step for them.
You know, I wouldn't put much past Governor Mills. She's already talking about using our tax dollars to defend this extreme policy, and that is going to put $250 million for Maine school children at risk. So I think she's capable of pretty near anything at this point.
Well, I mean, let's talk a little bit about that just for a moment. President Trump has said that he's willing to withhold federal funding to school districts and states that do not comply with his federal orders. What would it mean if Maine loses this funding, the federal funding? I can imagine it's not your primary source of education funding, but it does represent some a good chunk and important funding for particular areas like Title I and Title, even if there is Title IX funding.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, listen, Maine is a small state, and so comparative to other states, we have a small budget. But for our state, we have a really bloated budget. After 6 years of Governor Mills, she's taken it from $7 billion to almost $12 billion in that time. And so, as they've grown government and grown spending, they need every dollar to make sure we have the funds to meet that budget, to continue to put forward this ridiculously bloated budget. And that's coming right up, our vote on that very shortly. So at the same time, she already has a $500 million shortfall. They don't have the funds to meet that budget. And so they're looking at raising multiple taxes and instituting multiple new taxes already before the $250 million disappears. So Mainers are very overburdened, and this would be significant for our state.
Representative Laurel Libby, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to leave it there, but I think a lot of states, are in the same position where they've been reckless spending during the COVID pandemic. Budgets are overextended, and they're turning to taxpayers instead of trying to rein in spending. They're trying to go up against the Trump administration. We will keep watching what happens, and please don't be a stranger to our show.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. It is 7:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes.
WMAL, making sense of the news.
So, Hans, let's talk about flying near DCA. I laugh, but it's really no laughing matter when you consider how many near misses, and unfortunately, within the past month, the tragedy of a collision between a commercial aircraft and a military helicopter. And so we're now understanding that the FAA is going to be stepping in. The FAA, according to this headline, this is 7 News, FAA implements new airspace rules at Reagan Airport during presidential flights. The FAA is saying we will now bring air traffic at Reagan National Airport to a complete stop whenever the president flies nearby on Marine One. Hans, why is this not already policy?
I don't understand that at all. Look, for folks who haven't flown into Washington, they need to understand that the area of the city is a restricted airspace. No flights are allowed. And so that means that the approach landing areas going into Reagan are very narrow. They have to go along the Potomac River. The FAA should long ago have banned all helicopter traffic along that very narrow corridor. There was no reason for it. Yeah, it would make helicopters have to go around the other side of D.C., but they should have taken this move. Plus, they need to keep a permanent ban on all other helicopter traffic along there. If they don't, there'll be another tragic incident like this.
Well, from your lips to Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's the D.C. representative, non-voting, but D.C. representative to Congress, according to this reporting, she is urging the Pentagon to permanently stop VIP helicopter transports in the national capital region, excepting the vice president, the president, and national emergencies. I mean, I think you're right. If you just visit Washington, D.C., and you observe the amount of air traffic going on, not just aircraft but helicopters that are flying and buzzing around, it is remarkable that we haven't had more unfortunate incidences like these. And so, I mean, I think this is a good thing. This is a good change, and maybe there's more to come. Now, Elon Musk is stepping into with Doge, stepping into the controversy. I won't call it controversy. The government resizing, talking about air traffic controllers. And so this is an update here now where air traffic controllers are actually being asked to come back. He is urging retired air traffic controllers to take their jobs back because, quote, there's a shortage of top-notch air traffic controllers. So if you have retired but are opening to returning to work, Musk is asking on X to please do so. What is this impact is this going to have?
Well, look, we have one of the most overburdened air traffic systems in the world. Air traffic has increased enormously in the past decades. The system, I think, has long been at the breaking point because it's so busy. We see that, you and I do, flying in and out of Reagan and Dulles and the other airports all around Washington. So getting in more experienced traffic controllers is a good thing, particularly given the bad changes that the Biden administration was making at the FAA, where they were putting in hiring people based on DEI and all the things that should be not considered at all when you're trying to hire someone to handle some of the most important, one of the most important jobs in the country.
Well, I'm glad you raised DEI. We've been talking about it in a couple of different ways this morning, but it directly does affect the FAA and the air traffic controllers that are ensuring that people take off and land safely. We're now seeing reporting that there's a class action lawsuit alleging that about 1,000 would-be air traffic controller jobs were denied to the individuals based on the diversity hiring targets. You've spent plenty of time looking over these types of civil rights cases, Hans. To me, this reads a lot of air traffic controller men who tried to apply were denied because they weren't Black, they weren't Hispanic, they weren't women. Am I misreading that?
No, not at all. In fact, I know one of the lawyers who was involved in that lawsuit, and in essence, what happened was the FAA said they weren't going to hire graduates of various programs who trained people to be good air traffic controllers. Why? Why? Because they weren't graduating enough members of various minority groups, and so they just weren't going to hire folks from that. That
oh my goodness.
has been a key problem in the air traffic system, and that was caused by the prior administration.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that President Trump is ripping the covers off of what's been going on. I'm glad that we're now seeing an effort to right the wrongs of DEI and the discrimination, because to remedy discrimination is still discrimination, and it's still wrong and still illegal. All right, we'll have more on this. Stay with us at 7:23.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:37, WMAL News Talk 105.9. You're listening to O'Connor and Company, and it is a Friday, folks. We made it. It is Friday. Coming and right alongside me, of course, is Hans von Spakovsky. Hans, I'm sorry, I almost forgot to introduce you there.
That's okay.
All right, coming up at 8:05, we've got Alana Goodman of the Washington Free Beacon. She's going to give us the latest on the Epstein files, what we see, what we did not see, and what could be coming next. But first... I think spring makes all of our fevers rise. And here in the Washington area, nothing yells spring like the cherry blossoms. I'm happy to welcome Mike Litterst back to WMAL's O'Connor and Company. Mike is the chief spokesperson for the National Mall and Memorial Parks and the National Park Service. Mike, welcome to the program.
Hey, Patrice, thanks for having me. Good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you, too. Well, from what I understand, yesterday was a big day for the Park Service. We got some great news about the cherry blossoms. Do you want to share it with our audience?
Sure. It's sort of the kickoff to spring. Spring's not here, but the promise is there, and that's because we now think that the cherry blossoms are going to reach peak bloom sometime between March 28th and March 31st. So a little later than last year, but it's been a colder winter than we had last year, so I don't think that's going to be much of a surprise to folks.
Mike, one of the things that I think folks are going to have to deal with, I commute into D.C. every day. I drive through the prime area where the cherry blossom trees are, and there's huge construction project going on down there to, I think, fix part of the tidal basin. How is that going to affect the huge crowds that show up for our version of March Madness?
Yep. Just about a year ago, we announced the reconstruction of the south portion of the tidal basin, help keep the water where it's supposed to be and out of the cherry tree roots. We're about halfway through that right now. So going to be some impacts this year. Folks will find some construction activity, especially walking between the Jefferson Memorial and the FDR Memorial. But the good news is all of the trails are open, all the roads are open. And while it does affect an area, and we had to cut down about 148 of the cherry trees, there are still more than 2,500 trees that will be in bloom around the tidal basin. So,
but that included, right, for repeat visitors, Stumpy is no longer there, right?
Oh no.
That's correct. And part of this project is correcting the deficiencies of the tidal basin to make sure that in the future we don't have anything but healthy trees around the tidal basin.
Well, I think we need to do some sort of memorial service for Stumpy. He was a Washington institution, Mike, and we're speaking with Mike Litterst from the National Park Service about the cherry blossoms. So, did you all salvage his remains? Was he being kept on ice?
Our friends at the National Arboretum took some cuttings and have created some propagates, essentially some clones with the same genetic material. And when those are ready, in a couple of years, we'll plant those around the tidal basin. So his spirit will live on.
Very
that's
good.
Great.
Well, this is part of the larger celebration, as Han said, our version of March Madness, which is the National Cherry Blossom Festival, running from March 20th, to April 13th. Mike, do you want to give us a rundown of what folks can expect when they come down for the festival?
all sorts of activities, pink and white themed around the blossoms. The Blossom Kite Festival on the grounds of the Washington Monument, always a favorite that brings out the crowds. The National Cherry Blossom Festival Parade caps everything off. Our partners at the National Cherry Blossom Festival announced yesterday that Ken Jennings is going to be the Grand Marshal for the parade this year. And check out nationalcherryblossompfestival.org for the full list of events and programs going on.
Well, one other thing that's been going on, Mike, maybe you can tell visitors what to expect, is there is construction now going on around the Lincoln Memorial, right?
Yep, we are well past the halfway point of the construction project to put a museum in the Undercroft, or on the underside of the Lincoln Memorial. About 15,000 square feet of exhibit space that we intend to open in 2026, part of our plans to celebrate America's 250th anniversary on the National Mall.
Is the memorial totally cut off, or can people still go up to see the wonderful statue in there of Abraham Lincoln?
Nope, the memorial's open for the duration of the project. One of the things that we always carefully plan when we're doing construction around the memorials is to make sure that they're able to stay open while the construction is going on. It's a couple-year process. We know people sometimes, plan a once-in-a-lifetime trip here, and we make sure that even though there may be a little bit of construction activity around, that they'll always be able to access the memorials.
Terrific. Well, folks can go to, nationalcherryblossomfestival.org to get more details. Mike Litterst, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Patrice. Thanks, Hans.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
So, Hans, this isn't a story about people who are leftists who think they're helping the poor by easing the restrictions on them, not everybody. All right, we're going to ask you, is this fair? Let's play this. Cut 11. This is a new program in D.C. that's going to give some low-income residents a little bit of traffic violation relief.
Speed cameras, red light cameras like he's here, they're all over the district issuing fines. And for some drivers that have a traffic mistake, well, it could totally derail their budget. Mayor Muriel Bowser says this is about helping those where the fines hit the hardest while holding them accountable. In 2023, she created a task force asking for recommendations on what will ensure the district roads remain safe while offering financial relief for low-income residents. Now, in order to qualify, the vehicle owner must be a resident of D.C. and receive SNAP benefits. The request must be submitted within 30 days of when the ticket was issued. And it's good for only one fine to be reduced from $100 to $50. Now, the city is hoping this could help wipe some unpaid fines off the books. Dating back to the start of 2000 up until February 21st, more than 8.2 million traffic tickets have not been paid. That totals $1.8 billion in fines and penalties. Now, the city is expecting approximately 3,000 applications for the pilot program.
All right, so Hans, excuse me, is it fair to reduce these ticket violations for low-income residents?
No. Look, you're not going to have a problem if you obey the law. And what the mayor of the District of Columbia is saying is that the penalty that you get for violating the law is going to depend on who you are and what level in the socioeconomic sphere that you hold. That is not the way this country works. And look, if she wants less traffic violations, then quit doing things. For example, all the roads have been narrowed, major roads with major traffic, because of them putting in all these bike lanes, which of course nobody uses, and making it hard to find parking. It's everything they do is very restrictive and almost as if it's geared to want intentionally to get traffic fines to pay for all of their social programs.
Well, if anyone who's ever driven in from PG County, you know that on New York Avenue, coming off of 50, there are so many traffic lights, and boy, it is so easy to rack up $200 going 3 blocks. And I think you're right; it's 100% intentional. But they think they're going to get the people who have the money to pay these tickets, when in fact they're getting the people who live in these neighborhoods who may not be able to afford it.
Right.
You know, it's also very interesting that they're conditioning this based on if you receive SNAP. SNAP are another form of food stamps. That's what we call them now. So these benefits, and what we've seen is government, the federal government aided by these states, have expanded the number of people who receive food stamp benefits, even though, you know, President Biden used to boast about all of the millions of open available jobs there are in his economy, even though it seems like there should be, during great times of expansion, we should see fewer people getting welfare benefits. So, you know, I come at this from lots of different angles. I share your angst over the traffic in D.C. and the ridiculous way they've expanded even the sidewalks so that, you know, you can never find a parking space.
Right.
I agree with you. I don't think this is going to help. These people are not going to pay the fines anyway.
Yeah, and you know, there's been a lot of talk recently by Republicans in Congress about taking away home rule and having Congress running the city again, and this is just one more thing that will give incentive to doing that.
I did see Representative Jim Jordan push back a little bit on that. He said, you know what, we can't even get our federal fiscal house in order. I don't know if I want to turn the reins over of D.C. to Congress right now, but these ideas, you know, just pretty much, why not just wipe out all of the debt at this point? The mayor is wiping out half of a ticket price for a number of tickets. Why not just wipe out all of it? And then I wonder who's going to get stuck with the bill. That's also the question. Who's paying for all of this?
Right. And that's a real problem. Fortunately, she hasn't thought about putting in a commuter tax. As you'll recall, New York was just trying to do that, and Trump withdrew federal government approval of that, saying it was unfair to people who work in New York City.
Yeah, the left, they always have these great ideas. They're forcing us to change our habits, in this case driving, and forcing us out of cars onto bikes and into public transit when, again, unreliable. But that's what we've got here. So, all right, folks, if you are a SNAP recipient, you may be able to wipe out some of your credit, your traffic ticket debt, and we'll see if that is an incentive for people to do this again in the future, expecting more traffic ticket amnesty. It is 7:52 on O'Connor Company.